It seems that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have once again stirred irritation in Washington, this time for a reason that some might call surprisingly creative. Reports circulating online claim the Duke and Duchess recently made a two-day humanitarian visit to Jordan, where they met with refugees from Palestine and Syria. On the surface, the trip looked like a typical Sussex-style humanitarian engagement: compassionate messaging, cameras capturing meaningful moments, and a focus on raising awareness for vulnerable communities. In fact, many observers praised the visit. Even some critics acknowledged that highlighting refugee issues and healthcare access was hardly controversial. The invitation came from the World Health Organization, whose Director General publicly thanked the couple for their compassion and generosity. By all appearances, it was a fairly standard humanitarian outing. However, when Harry and Meghan are involved, calm headlines rarely stay calm for long. According to the same reports, someone in Washington was reportedly upset. The reason? While the couple was visiting Jordan, the United States was allegedly preparing a military strike against Iran, an operation said to be called Operation Epic Fury. An anonymous source cited in the report claimed that having two globally recognized public figures conducting what was described as a pseudo-royal humanitarian tour in the Middle East at that moment created an inconvenience. The concern, according to the claim, was that their presence in the region could have drawn extra attention during a sensitive military operation. Looking closer at the timeline, though, the situation becomes less dramatic. Harry and Meghan's trip reportedly ended on the 26th, while the strike was said to have taken place on the 28th. Additionally, Jordan sits roughly 1,000 miles away from Iran. The suggestion that two people visiting refugee camps in Jordan complicated a secret operation days later and far across the region requires a fair amount of speculation. Still, in today's media environment, speculation can quickly shape a narrative. Once a story is framed as "the White House was furious," it begins to sound like a diplomatic crisis, even if the underlying evidence consists mainly of anonymous comments and conjecture. Headlines such as "Sussexes anger the White House" practically write themselves. The report also suggested that if something had gone wrong in the region, the couple could have been placed at risk, potentially creating additional complications. In theory, that concern isn't unreasonable. High-profile individuals traveling in politically sensitive areas can add security considerations, and governments often prefer minimal unpredictability when planning military actions. But there's an important distinction here. Harry and Meghan were not acting as diplomats or representing the British government. Their trip was a humanitarian visit organized through the World Health Organization, something celebrities, activists, and public figures participate in frequently. Even so, the story quickly evolved into another chapter in the long-running narrative surrounding the Sussexes, where almost any activity can be framed as a disruption to larger events. Anyone who has followed coverage of the couple in recent years will recognize the pattern. Whether they release documentaries, give interviews, launch podcasts, or do charity work, reactions tend to split into two camps. One side sees a couple trying to build an independent humanitarian identity outside the traditional royal system. The other views their efforts as carefully orchestrated publicity campaigns. Each appearance reignites the same debate. Are they helping, self-promoting, interfering, or simply living in the spotlight where controversy is inevitable? What makes this particular story somewhat ironic is that even some critics acknowledged the Jordan trip itself had positive outcomes. Refugee communities received attention, healthcare access was highlighted, and humanitarian groups gained media exposure, results many would consider beneficial. Online commentary added its own layer of humor and skepticism. Some people simply shrugged at the idea that drawing attention to humanitarian issues might irritate political figures, suggesting that wouldn't necessarily be a bad outcome. Ultimately, the same headline can mean very different things depending on who's reading it. For some, it's yet another example of the Sussexes creating unnecessary spectacle. For others, it's a reminder of how easily modern media narratives can transform routine events into controversy. In today's celebrity news cycle, almost anything can be reframed as drama. A humanitarian visit becomes a diplomatic headache. A charity engagement turns into a geopolitical concern. And two public figures meeting refugees in Jordan somehow ends up linked to a military operation thousands of miles away. If nothing else, it demonstrates how stories involving Harry and Meghan rarely stay simple. Even a short trip meant to spotlight humanitarian work can quickly evolve into an international political headline, because in the world of royal drama and celebrity media, the story is rarely just the story.